A girl walks through a snowy city while snow flies in her face. There is a real snowstorm outside. The girl breathes nervously and feels that her lips are dry and chapped. With her fragile body, it's hard to resist the elements. She goes to her rescue, but unfortunately she is not sure if she can bear the journey. Estelle tries to shield her wind-ravaged and cold face from the freezing snow that flies towards her. But the heroine does not lose sight of her landmark. The girl falls into the snow and realizes that no matter how strong her willpower is, the body just refuses to go on and stops obeying. The girl asks, "Is she going to die?" Estelle cannot believe in her fate as such a lowly heiress of an earl's family. The events are moved a few hours before these events to the Brienne family. The main character named Estelle Brienne was called loudly, from what the girl shook with fear because she realized that it is not good. Estelle's father, whose name is Alden, and he is the equal Earl of Brienne. He wonders how long Estelle is going to disgrace her family and what she is thinking. Alden can't believe that Estelle would think of going out in such a horrible way. Her father hopes that Estelle doesn't want rumors to spread that the lady of the Brienne family is spreading white sickness. In this world, the white disease is called albinism. It's an inherited disease that's caused by the complete or almost complete absence of the pigment melanin. Alden says that everyone will whisper that it is a terrible disease in which everything dyes white as if graying. L'Aurelia, the Earl of Brienne's wife, looks at Estelle with displeasure. Her father is ashamed of Estelle showing her face to the public, so let her listen to her family's orders. The next moment, the family's conversation is interrupted by a servant who tells the Earl that a guest has arrived. Estelle's father wonders what this guest could be. A girl enters the room and apologizes for showing up unannounced. She has something to tell the Brienne family. The butler asks the lady to be tidy, but the guest shows with all her appearance that she has very important information. At this point, Lorelei is surprised and tries to ask the butler, "What's going on here?" The butler apologizes and promises that now he knows everything and will explain. The man doesn't know how to break the news delicately. The girl who entered the room says that she is the eldest daughter of Count Brienne. At that moment, Estelle felt a shiver run through her. She knew what it could mean. The heroine had already guessed that not all was well in this affair. The girl looks carefully at the guest who claims to be her sister. But then the Count's possible daughter tells her that when she was a baby, she was mistaken for another child by the nurse. The family wonders if this is a mistake, and Estelle was an illegitimate daughter of the Brienne family. Estelle's father gets up from his seat and asks the butler to send the brat away. But the butler is very shy and tries to explain something. The man asks the Count to look at the girl's eyes, which are the same purple as the Earl's family, which may show the girl's true identity, as well as the hair, which is similar to the Count's. The man looks at the girl and is amazed, because it's his exact replica. This color is really similar to that of the Brienne family. The girl is trying to say that she is truly the daughter of the Earl of Brienne. Isn't it clear by looking at her appearance? Estelle feels that she may not be wanted by anyone, because she is disliked because of her illness and will be thrown out of the house because she is not a blood relative of her father and mother. L'Aurelia tells the butler that this is a very strange case. She can't believe what is going on here and tries to find out if there is any proof. The butler presents Estelle's father with a letter of guarantee from the wizard, and as the lady said, she is indeed the Brienne's own child. Alden looks at the wizard's seal and realizes that this is an incredible mistake that lasted for years, and no one knew of such a tragedy. The man looks at this girl and asks, "Is she really the birth daughter of the Count's family?" The girl stood very demurely by the door and shakes a little, saying that it is true. The guest points to Estelle and accuses her because the Count's real daughter has been switched with the maid's daughter. Estelle, as soon as she heard these words, a forgotten memory came over her, of being in a novel that the heroine had read in her past life. This memory was clear and distinct. This is the story of Cinderella Countess Celia. The protagonist's fate changed with the arrival of the beggar girl, and Estelle's role in this novel is merely a directorial device to describe the protagonist Celia's impoverished past. L'Aurelia can't contain her joy and runs to Celia. She says that this is indeed their daughter. Celia calls the Countess, who is unfamiliar to her, mother. The family is restored. Celia and Lorelei embrace. It was a real joke of fate and they don't know what to make of it. But in the next moment, L'Aurelia turns to Estelle. After all, this white ghost can't be a descendant of their family. All eyes were cast on Estelle, who was the real bastard of the family and no one loved her. They don't understand why they haven't suspected Estelle of not being their own daughter. Estelle's father comes up to Estelle and confidently says that the girl must understand everything. They are no longer family. Estelle calls Aldan her father, and she has lived her whole life being brought up as a true countess. Aldan tells her that Estelle will be accompanied by several servants. After all, their Brienne family has honor. But Aldan also says that since Estelle has left this house, they will be strangers. So now Estelle must return to her home. The servants began to escort Estelle. They were surprised by the abnormal cold that was outside today. One of the servants asks Mrs. Estelle to hurry up and go to them because you can't stay out in this cold for too long. But then the servant interrupts himself because Estelle is no longer mistress. The girl hears these words and she feels bad. The servants laugh at Estelle and ask who her father is, for she is the daughter of a servant. Estelle is not a real mistress and they laugh. The servants walk in the direction of the guest house, but for some reason it is nowhere to be seen. Estelle walks behind the servants, but feels that her legs don't move. Estelle was in a terrible state and she didn't understand why her body didn't want to work. It felt like she was carrying heavy luggage and she could feel the weight weighing down her body. She felt dizzy and, if it's because of the white sickness. The servants who were annoyed that they had to accompany some servant's daughter could not wait for Estelle and ordered the girl to go faster. But one of the maids said that her companion should not worry because she should think about why they were kicked out of the county. The girl persuades her companion to leave Estelle and go about their business. No one will look for the pathetic daughter of a poor maid and an unknown father. The heroine feels that she is just going to be left in this cold to die. How could such an injustice happen? For it is simply the murder of a weak person. She reaches out her hand to the departing people and can't believe that she was betrayed so easily. Estelle sees that no one is going to accompany her, and that's the end of it. Now there is one of the biggest storms in decades, and all the people are hiding in their houses, and the sound is bad through the fast wind. The heroine wants to cry, but can't, because the frost doesn't even allow the liquid to pour out of her eye sockets properly. The girl was found in the corner of a house. The snow had already covered her. Usually in this weather you can find people frozen in the city. Usually it's homeless people or people who didn't make it home from a party. What's most interesting is that animals quickly find a way to escape the raging elements, unlike humans. The man who turned up, her sullenly staring at Nakodka. The guy takes off his hood to get a better look at the girl that was dressed in beautiful aristocratic clothes. It turned out to be a handsome fellow with yellow eyes. He recognized the nobility in Estelle's face and knew that this was hardly an ordinary servant girl. Usually, aristocrats bask in their palaces, and they are the most protected group of people who are least likely to be found in such terrible weather. This is a living person first and foremost, and it was wild to the man that no one helped the girl. If you looked closely, you could see the nobility in that hair and cheekbones. Claude thought the girl was dead because she gave no sign of life, and decided that he could just go away and ignore the unpleasant and sad finder. But then Claude hears a cough. The girl is alive, so there's a chance to save her. The guy immediately goes back to the weakened girl, who was lucky to give a sign of life while Claude was still here. The man takes Estelle in his arms and tries to check her breathing and pulse. Claude realizes that this girl is lucky, but she's going to die soon. So he pulls a potion out of his pocket. It's a very rare thing, and the luck of this potion could stun the goddess Fortune. Claude opens the flask, then drinks the contents of the flask. This magic potion will help Estelle to recover, but in such a state, the girl is not able to swallow the liquid herself. The man has no choice but to pour the potion down her throat himself. Claude approaches the unconscious girl. Claude kisses Estelle and does so only to save the girl. Claude knows that after this, God will guide the girl to the right path and she will be safe. Claude hopes that no one will object to his latest kindness. He has to wear a hood so no one can see Claude's face, and it's cold as hell. The man carries the cold girl in his arms, but she will live. He takes her to the palace across the street. The most important thing is that Claude knows the Duke's character, and he will not leave the girl in trouble, so everything will be fine, especially when the potion is working. The angry butler goes to his master. He sees no obstacle in front of him to tell the bad news. The butler turns to Mr. Aland, who has been practicing with his sword. Alon notices that the butler is not in a good mood. The lord nevertheless greets his butler and wishes him a good morning. The elderly butler bows his head to Aland. The old man says he has important news. The man tells Mr. Aland that a man was dragged under their door last night and they found him. This girl was frozen in a terrible cold but alive. She was wearing aristocratic clothes and with the appearance of noble blood. Now the butler does not know what to do about it and wants to consult with Mr. Alland. Mr. Alland is surprised because he thought that someone like his brother could bring his mistress. The butler laughs at Alland's joke. The master says that according to the butler last night, a black-haired guy showed up and threw the girl in front of the house like a puppy. I wonder if the butler accepted this girl into their palace. The boy hopes the girl is in the best conditions of the ducal palace. The old servant agrees because he won't put the poor girl out in the cold. Alland says that the old man is good and the girl could freeze to death in such cold. Now the lord wonders where such a girl came from. The old man smiles at the gentleman and says that they can ask this girl who will tell who she is best. They go into her room. The two men stood outside Estelle's room and knocked to ask to come in. But the boys did not hear a response from the room, so they had to enter without permission into the female bedroom of an unknown noble guest. The butler opens the room and one could see Estelle sleeping, who hadn't even opened her eyes yet. Alland noticed that the girl was incredibly beautiful, although she had white sickness. It was amazing, but it felt as if this girl was from the old house. But unfortunately, the Duke could not understand where such guesses came from, as if this girl's blood was not simple. Alland looks at Estelle's pale face and the butler confirms Alland's guess. The master realizes that this girl is gaunt and looks very bad. Alland doesn't understand how a person can be so thin. White disease is not well known, so most people treat it as an infectious disease, and don't know that it's a genetic disease that isn't transmitted through air, water, or food. Alland asks the old man what's wrong with the condition of this girl. He wants specific data. The old man tells him that the fever has gone down considerably and the crisis has passed, so they can only wait for the girl to open her eyes. Alland agrees with the butler, but still, "We must get a physician. It's very important. It would be a shame if such an important guest was not served properly, and it is only human." The old man smiles and realizes that his lord will not leave the poor girl in distress. He knows that the Duke knows how to show kindness, and of all the brothers, Alland is the kindest and most sensitive. Estelle wakes up in a warm bed and feels that softness and warmth surround her. It's an amazing feeling, because even at the Count's estate, the heroine didn't feel such quality bedding. She opens her eyes and asks herself, if this is death. It is strange that in paradise can be such an environment, and where are the angels that escort the souls of the dead? Estelle sees a chandelier and beautiful patterns, so she can't understand why she ended up in such a strange place, which is definitely not heaven or hell. The girl is able to get out of bed and feel her head splitting apart, so she tries to figure out what happened. Estelle remembers that she definitely lost consciousness in that blizzard, because it was just a terrible snowstorm. Such in her life the heroine does not remember, and only the old servants of the parental estate remembered in their childhood weather worse, when houses to the roofs covered the snowball. Estelle realizes that she has not seen such bright rooms in the county, and this must be another place. So the girl becomes frightened where her fate may have taken her. Estelle sees portraits on the walls and beautiful decorations. Everything shines and glows, and maybe it's just a dream. Estelle hears someone enters her room, so she notices a handsome man standing at the door. He says happily that the guest is finally awake. Estelle tries to get out of bed and asks who the man is. The heroine is still unsure of herself, so it's hard to move. The girl sees the guy's hand reaching out to her, and she gets scared. Estelle is used to being treated very badly in her family. She's been treated very badly, so she thinks she's going to get hit. Estelle closes her eyes to avoid seeing the violence. But then the guy puts his soft and warm palm on her head and asks, "Has the fever broken?" Estelle feels kindness from this man but still does not trust him and shakes with fear. Estelle is also surprised. The man had touched her. The guy did not feel bad and did not scream with fear or anger. Estelle from her early childhood was used to no one touching her because it is forbidden because her white disease can be transmitted. Estelle remembers Lorelia screaming with rage because she accidentally touched her daughter. Lorelia was very unhappy that she had touched this white ghost. She accused her daughter of all sins and that it was her own fault that she was born ugly. So Lorelia asked the servants to bring water as soon as possible to wash away the smell. Estelle had been used to not being touched since she was a child, for it was under a terrible ban. Lorelia was furious and demanded to be washed quickly. The woman could not let her beautiful body suffer from this terrible disease that would kill the beauty of her hair and eyes. Now Estelle sees the guy and can't understand why he isn't afraid of her white disease. This man probably doesn't know that Estelle has white sickness yet. That's why he's acting so strange. But then a maid approaches Mr. Alland and says that Estelle probably hasn't recovered yet, so it's hard for her to talk. Alland says that if that's true, why did the girl get out of bed and let her lie down a little longer to recuperate? But Estelle is interrupted by the Lord's voice and asks Alland what this place is. Alland is surprised by such a question and succinctly replies that this is his home. Estelle realizes that this is not an answer and tries to find out where Mr. Alland's house is. The Duke tells her that it is the Duchy of Valois. Estelle is surprised to hear this information. The Duchy of Valois is the family of the Red Duke that has protected the Empire since its founder. The name has been an idol of the people of the Empire, and the red hair is an exceptional feature of the Valois family. Alland decides to start with a greeting and tells them that his name is Alland Valois. He is happy to welcome a guest into his home. He is the second son of the Valois family. Estelle realizes that he is the second son of the Valois family. It's very serious, and she finds herself in the presence of a real duke. The man wonders what his beautiful guest's name is. Alland tries somehow to encourage the girl to dialogue because for some reason she does not speak much. The heroine realizes that if the Duke learns her name as the White Ghost of Brienne's family, he will hate her too. The girl sees the beautiful face of Alland that saved her and realizes that she will not lie to such a kind savior. The heroine confesses that she is Estelle Brienne, but she still knows inside herself that she has lied because she is no longer a member of the Brienne family. The Duke nods understandingly and knows about the Brienne family. Alland convinces Estelle that until she's better, she'll live under the Duke's roof for a while. Because the frostbite was very stressful on her body, Alland holds out his hand to Estelle and asks that they get along during this time. Estelle was surprised because during her short life, she had never been asked to shake hands. Touching was a taboo for the heroine. Alland asks, "Doesn't the guest want to shake his hand?" Estelle tries to explain that she is ill. Alland says that probably Estelle is afraid to shake his hand lest he get infected. Alland tries to reassure the fairy that he is not so easily infected with a cold. After all, he is in good health. Estelle can't say anything to such a statement because she doesn't mean a common cold. Estelle decides to take a risk and shakes the Duke's hand. Alland asks that the lady feel at home for the duration of her stay in his house. Estelle felt it was difficult to contain her emotions. She had never been treated as kindly as she was today. As time passes, a few days have passed since Estelle started living in the duchy. The maid brought Estelle some sea turtle soup because the girl needs to eat more soup to regain her health. The healer said that tomorrow Estelle can eat at least grain bread. Mistress thanks the maid for her help. She is not at all bored of eating soup, and even though she has had it for several days in a row, it still seems very tasty to Estelle. This is the first time Estelle has eaten such an amazing dish. The maid says that it is a great relief, and she will be sure to tell the chef that Mistress liked the dish. The chef was worried that the lady might get bored with the monotonous food, but Estelle tries to convince the maids that there is no reason to worry. One of the maids accidentally touches her arm. Estelle apologizes and quickly pulls her hand away, because she's used to not being allowed to touch people. This rule has remained since the heroine's childhood. The maid looked at Estelle with disgust. The maid's name was Emma. She couldn't contain her horror after touching Estelle, so she quickly began to wipe her finger with a napkin to avoid contracting the white disease. The older maid angrily asks Emma what this rude act is. Emma apologizes because she unknowingly tried to protect her body to avoid contracting the disease. The head maid tells Emma not to apologize because there is a need for disciplinary action and for Emma to go away. The maid leaves and the head maid remains with Estelle. It was clear that the girl understood her guilt. The head maid apologizes to Mistress Estelle for the act of her younger colleague because she did not want Estelle to be offended. The maid says that Emma has only recently started working here, and that is why she did such a rude act. She will train her so that this situation will not happen again. Estelle smiles and says it's okay because she's used to it. Estelle eats the next portion of soup and thinks about her sad fate. If it wasn't for the older maid together from Mr. Aland, maybe she really would have died. Estelle would have died not only from the cold, but also from a cold that could hardly be cured if she had not been well looked after. Estelle is already a very thin girl, even if this care was out of sympathy. It was the first time in her life she had ever received so much care. On top of that, these were complete strangers to her. They were not relatives. Estelle asks herself if she can be happy if she is cared for in this way. The girl asks her maid Audrey, who immediately pays attention to Estelle. Estelle realizes that there is a lot of noise outside and wonders, did something happen? Audrey apologizes because she forgot to tell Estelle the big news. The whole palace is talking about it. Audrey tells that today the second Duke is coming back, and soon there will be more of them at the manor. The maid happily tells that perhaps the second Duke will arrive soon or is already here. The girl asks Estelle not to worry too much. After all, the second Duke is a good man and he will not mind Estelle. Mistress was happy to hear this news and hesitantly agreed from Audrey. Although Alon said that everything is fine, but the second Duke may have other thoughts. Estelle started to worry because she might be chased away again and wake up from her happy dream. Estelle thinks that before leaving she would like to thank Alon for showing her care, because there probably won't be a better time in Estelle's life. But then Estelle saw from the window that the master was chatting with his servant, but suddenly Alon got a heartache and the man held his hand on the painful place. Estelle was worried and anxious. Perhaps it was she who had infected the man with such a disease. Estelle couldn't hold back a scream, and at that time Audrey was cleaning up the plates for the mistress, so one of the plates was dropped from the sudden scream. Audrey asks Estelle what happened and why she made such a scream. Now they have to make excuses for where the plate disappeared to. Estelle tells Audrey that Mr. Alland has fallen and needs help. The heroine is scared for the Duke. Audrey runs to the window and asks how such a thing could happen. The maid asks to look out the window too. The two girls observe from the window that Alland is on his knees and holding his chest. The man is clearly holding back incredible pain. The maid tells them that this is a harbinger of illness and it has come on earlier than last time. He realizes this. That's why it's no laughing matter. If the disease starts, there will be chaos all around. The maid turns to Mrs. Estelle and explains that it's dangerous to be here, but Estelle was no longer there. The girl quickly put on her heels and ran to her Alland. The girl wanted to help the man who didn't leave her in trouble. At this time, Alland held back his pain and sparks began to appear around him. It was not like a normal attack of illness. Estelle stops because she realizes that this is something unusual. Audrey tries to catch her breath and explains that Estelle suddenly ran away. The heroine remembers that she saw a similar disease when she was taken to the temple to study the white sickness. One of the men was also covered in electrical impulses, and the temple workers tried to help him. Estelle realizes that Alland has overdone it. This is a very dangerous disease. Estelle runs forward. But Audrey tries to stop her because it could be too dangerous. Estelle ignores the maid's screams and runs to Alland. At this time, the man tried to get to his feet and is overcome with incredible pain. Alland feels the blood boiling inside his body. His eyes turn red. Estelle runs to Alland and hugs the man. In her screaming, she asks the guy not to move. Alland did not expect such treatment to himself. Immediately, the red color disappears from his eyes. The man feels relaxed and the pain subsides. How is this possible? Because even the strongest medicines do not help with this disease. Estelle says that when Alland is overwhelmed, he needs to relax and stay still as much as possible, and then the attack will recede. Estelle supports the man so he doesn't fall. But still, the fragile and thin girl cannot bear the heavy man and explains to Alland that it is very hard for her. The servants come out of the castle to watch what is going on, but they don't come close. They are worried about Mistress Estelle, but there is still fear of the Lord's attack. At that moment, Alland fell down, without feeling on Estelle, who finds herself under the heavy man. Estelle even felt dizzy. At that moment, the eldest son of the Valois family comes up and says it's a marvelous sight. Is Estelle really the guest his brother told him about? After the meeting with Estelle, the eldest brother of the family wondered if the power of the phoenix flowed in the blood of the Valois. Often this power caused a serious overload in the human body. It's a common chronic disease of the four great families, including the Valois who are blessed by God. The church has no cure for this disease. But at one point, Estelle appeared and was able to calm Alland. How could this happen, and maybe it's just a coincidence? The butler comes in to see the gentleman. He speaks to Lloyd because he has something to tell him about Estelle. Lloyd gets curious. The butler says that a few days ago, their maid ran into a Brienne maid and talked to her. And the maid said that they had a new mistress a few days ago. Lloyd wonders how this can be. The servant tells her that the only daughter who was originally in the family has disappeared, and now the new daughter will be officially added to the family registry. Estelle feels frightened at that moment, for she did not expect the second Duke to appear so suddenly. And at that moment when she was in such a terrible state, with Alon's body lying on top of Estelle, Estelle was surprised that she couldn't even say hello to Lloyd. It's a great shame for Estelle she doesn't know where to put herself now. The heroine is a white-blooded patient and so ill-mannered. Estelle keeps blaming herself for being born albino. If she really gets kicked out, how will she live in the world of this novel where Estelle has no place? The novel is a terrible place for such a heroine. She doesn't know how she died in her past life or how she was born as a character in the novel. But in the end, the protagonist of this work is Celia Brienne. And that was the reason why Estelle's treatment in the county was so horrible and why she was bullied so much. However, there is something strange. After all, the family is so wealthy that they aren't even afraid of the emperor. This is exactly how the Brienne family was portrayed in the novel. It occurred to me after Estelle tried to remember her past life. But it seems that Brienne never had the connections or wealth that she did in the novel, and Celia was definitely a passive character. Estelle doesn't understand why the content of the novel has changed. The next moment, someone knocks on Mrs. Estelle's room and asks to come in. Estelle gets out of bed because she was interrupted at the most inopportune moment when she was dreaming. The head maid named Audrey enters the room. She asks, "Has Mistress Estelle been very frightened lately?" For Audrey. The most important thing is that Estelle is not hurt anywhere, for it was very dangerous to go to Mr. Allande like that. Estelle smiles and says she is fine and is worried about Duke Allande. After all, he had a terrible seizure. Audrey says that Allande is resting now and also about Estelle. There's a lot of talk now. Audrey is happy that Estelle will make her popular too. This is the first time they have seen such a sight. Audrey suggests that Estelle go for a walk instead of talking about it during the walk. Estelle asks, "Is she really allowed to go?" Audrey replies to Mistress that it is, of course, and is frightened. So it is necessary to correct her mood. Mistress has also given permission, so there is no problem to go for a walk. Estelle tenses up, and as for Mr. Allande, she feels insecure. And does he mind that Estelle is here because the girl is worried? The girl listens attentively to the gentleman and takes her hands, trying to assure the Countess that everything will be all right. She has no reason to worry. Estelle is a benefactor for Mr. Allande, and she must be by the Lord's side. So, don't let Estelle say that. Estelle felt the touch of the maid's hands, and she wasn't sure if it felt wonderful. After all, no one had ever been touched in her entire life. When Estelle put on her winter outfit, Audrey praised her mistress because it was a very beautiful dress. Estelle smiled happily because it is very warm to be in such a wonderful outfit. She is surprised by the comfort of this dress. Audrey can't help but admire it because Mrs. Sibel used to wear it, so Audrey thinks it would be perfect for Estelle. Audrey suggests that they hurry up and go outside. Estelle wonders who Mrs. Sibel is, but I guess she'll have to ask next time because she has to go now. The mistress goes out with her maid to get some air. The weather has normalized outside. Estelle says that it is very beautiful here, and she marvels at the beauty of the ducal garden. Audrey happily tells us that magic works here to keep the weather warm. That's why the garden is full of flowers all year round. And Estelle thought it had warmed up so quickly. Could it really be such amazing magic? Estelle sees a beautiful gazebo where they can have fun. Audrey asks Estelle if she would like to enjoy a tea party in the gazebo since the day is so warm and the weather is beautiful here. Estelle cheerfully says that would be wonderful. Audrey asks that Estelle rest while she does what she needs to do to sit together in the gazebo. Estelle asks that Audrey wait, but the girl runs off. Estelle follows her maid to see what is going on. Estelle sees a strange man standing on the edge of the gazebo, and she goes over to see who it is. It turns out to be a handsome man with blue eyes. His pink hair was very visible. He asks who this beautiful mistress is. Estelle sees this man and doesn't understand. Is it really an angel because she is amazed with his beauty that is not ordinary? He looks like her in some way, the man asks. Estelle does not hear, and he tries to tell her by lips that he would like to know the name of this lady. Estelle was so much surprised that she couldn't say a word. The next moment, Audrey comes up and is surprised. Did Mr. Enard come here and she didn't expect to see him? Audrey wondered when Mr. Enard had returned, for he had not even said anything. Estelle continues to be in a state of shock. Enard says that this is his house and that he has to tell everyone when he came. Estelle apologizes and greets the Duke. It is a pleasure to meet him. She was surprised she didn't recognize the lord. But Enard wonders why Estelle calls him Duke. Audrey has no time to prevent the mistake. Enard asks, "Is it the new maid?" But Audrey flatly replies that it is not true and the master is mistaken. Duke Enard must have heard about the rumors about Mr. Ayland, and Audrey gives Enard a very unpleasant look. Audrey tells that the protagonist of those rumors is here, and it is Mistress Estelle. The girl is embarrassed, while the Duke is sizing her up. Enard disrespectfully asks what Estelle does with her body, since she's all skin and bones. But Audrey tries to accuse the Duke of not treating the young lady like that. Estelle felt it was an insult, to her heart's content. Enard sighs and says that he has done nothing wrong, and there is no reason to blame the young lord. The Duke also asks why Estelle isn't eating anything, since she looks so weak. Audrey is practically crying by now, and asks that the Duke behave carefully out of the young mistress. Estelle continues to feel that every word of Duke Enard beats her heart. Audrey tries to reassure the Countess that everything will be fine and she should not worry. But then she hears a voice greeting Estelle. It turns out to be the same Alond who was very happy to see Estelle. He waves his hand in greeting to his mistress. Estelle greets Mr. Alond with joy. At this moment, Duke Enard was very scared, and he was a little bit not expecting to see Alond here. Estelle goes up to Alond and asks if the Duke is all right, and if he should probably get some rest, because only recently the man has suffered a huge loss of strength. But Alond smiles and says he's fine, and usually his family would beat Alond unconscious. But this time, no one did. Estelle can't understand at all that this happened, and is the gentleman trying to say about fainting? She didn't expect such sincerity. Probably no one found a better method against Alond's seizure than to hit the master with something heavy to make him faint. The next moment, Alond tells the girl that he thanked her profusely for being able to calm his illness, but it was too dangerous. And if it happens again, Alond asks that Estelle keep away from him. Estelle agrees, and if it helped, it's okay. Estelle asks Mr. Alond if he thinks he saved Estelle's life too, and she owes him for that, so she decided to thank him. Enard was not very happy to see Alond smiling at the lady. It was very unusual to see Alond interacting so nicely with Estelle as well. Also, Alond tells Estelle that she has a guest coming, and this guest is from the temple. Estelle looks at Alond carefully. Her hand suddenly trembles. Estelle thanks Alond for her kindness, but her illness is incurable, so there is no need to try to do anything about it. She has seen many doctors, but they all said that there was no cure for the disease. Estelle was saddened, but Alond interrupts her words. He tells Estelle that nothing in the world is impossible. Estelle was surprised at such words and did not know what to say. When the clergyman came to see Estelle, he stated that the white sickness had progressed considerably. Alond was very angry with the clergyman and asks who would not know it. If you can see it in Estelle herself. The girl asks how much time she has left because she must know. Alond was frightened by Estelle's questions, and he didn't expect it to be so serious. The priest can't answer at once, and after a little thinking says that maybe 3 years. But when the priest sees Alond burning with fire, he immediately changes his mind and suggests that maybe Estelle can live for 10 years, and he will risk his life to prolong Estelle's life for another 10 years. Lloyd says sullenly that extending life is not a happy thing. But with the priest's abilities, curing Estelle will be very difficult. Alond asks the priest a laconic question, who can help Estelle with her progressing illness? The priest says that perhaps the head priest should do the job. After all, no one else is capable of curing such a bad case. Alond says that this is great, and he asks Lloyd if he has heard this wonderful fact. The older brother grudgingly tells him that it is true, and perhaps he can help. The priest says that with all due respect, the head priest doesn't go out unless there is trust. And Lloyd says that the sick Estelle can't make it to the temple, and there's nothing that can be done. Alond suggests that they can donate a lot of money and get the head priest to come to them. Enard and the priest are shocked at the thought. And if Alond has truly lost his mind, why does he need the Countess? Lloyd immediately confirms his little brother's thought that it's not a bad idea and it might work. Enard was doubly shocked. The priest didn't understand what was going on here either. Who was this girl, and why was she so important to Alond and Lloyd? Estelle watched what was happening and couldn't say anything against it. Enard comes into Lloyd's office and says he did a job he shouldn't have done, and Enard realizes it was an order, and he beheaded the 3 and left them in the warehouse. Lloyd says it's a good job, and he's pleased with the way Enard completed the task. Enard is a little sad and says he understands. But why would Lloyd help this guest and even summon the high priest for her? Enard thinks he didn't think Lloyd liked helping people. Lloyd saw how this girl helped Alond, and maybe that's the key to helping his little brother. Lloyd will spare no expense to do that. Lloyd says it's not magic or any other power, but something else. For some reason, Alond doesn't regain consciousness. He just sleeps. Enard asks, is it because of the guest? And maybe it's just a coincidence, and Alond behaved differently when the guest appeared. But Lloyd doesn't think it's a coincidence. Alond's overload is too much to bear. His powers are so frantic that people around him run away when they hear him rebooting. The guest didn't harm Alond in any way. And the servant Alond ordered for Estelle paid off. Enard agrees and perhaps it can help, but he has a legitimate question. Why is Alond in such a state and so benevolent? Loida heard that when Mistress Estelle touched him, the pain went away. Maybe it's something to do with that, and Enard knows the pain of overload. Lloyd wants to keep Mistress Estelle in the duchy until she is fully recovered, and he has already told his father, and he is going home. Enard wonders, is father really coming home? Lloyd says it is true and he will arrive tomorrow. Enard shakes his leg a little and realizes Lloyd. Now because of the renovations, the mansion will be noisy and Enard just hates noise. He turns around and leaves the room, leaving Lloyd alone. Lloyd realizes that it has been brought to their attention how the Duke of Karlstein arrived in the capital. Lloyd wants to know where this information came from. The butler says it was reported by the Karanka Guild itself. It's been 5 years since Duke Karlstein has been in the Grand Duchy. Lloyd realizes that Karlstein must be up to something. Among the 4 families that have long defended the continent, the Grand Duchy of Karlstein has the blood of the most divine beast, and that is the dragon. Their power was immense, but it was the Duke of Karlstein who suffered the most from this blood because this family rarely traveled outside the duchy. It kept the Karlstein heir locked up. He was completely isolated. The current Duke Claude Karlstein was no exception. At this time, Estelle was walking in the garden and realized that a few days ago there was a blizzard, because of which nothing could be seen. Luckily, Estelle was at the Duke's mansion. But where would she make a living when she left the mansion? Estelle realized that sooner or later she would be kicked out. The only thing Estelle was good at was embroidery. Estelle was shunned, so she sat in her room and embroidered, and it was the only thing she could safely do. It's nice that Estelle can do it, but it's a shame she can't remember most of the novel. Estelle became curious because she heard some strange noise and turns in the direction of the source of the sound. All the servants of the house lined up and greeted their master. They stood cheerfully waiting for the Lord to come out to them. It turned out to be the acting Duke and father of Alond under the name Clement. It had been 6 months, and Clement had not seen Euron for a long time. The butler greets his master, who finally managed to get to his house. The sons also come out to greet their father. Lloyd and his younger brothers come out to Clement. The man looks at his sons and hopes Lloyd didn't overdo the training. But then Clement spots a girl. It was Estelle who was standing behind the men. The girl saw Clement's attention, so she greeted the Duke and she was glad to meet him. Estelle introduces that her name is Estelle, and she is a guest and is staying at the mansion for now. Clement heard that Estelle has been at the mansion for 3 days now, and a few days ago there was a severe cold and how the girl fainted. Estelle was surprised by such a question because she didn't expect such an interest from Duke Clement. Estelle said that the man she called father kicked her out of the house. Alon heard this sad news, and it was very painful for him to hear the girl talk about it. Clement asks, does Estelle mean to say that her own father did this to her, but why did he abandon his daughter? Alond of the other brothers were not happy that the father asks such very provocative questions. Alond, as the bravest, tries to interrupt Clement's father not to ask such questions to Estelle. But the girl answers Clement, and it turns out that her real mother is a servant, and who her father is not even known, and they said that at birth Estelle was confused with the real daughter of Count Brienne. But now it doesn't make sense, and they probably think Estelle died in that winter storm. Estelle is glad that she is not treated like a ghost in this mansion, and she is already grateful to all these people for being so kind to her. The heroine turns to the servants of the Valois palace and surprises them all, for their kindness has made Estelle happy. The butlers and maids were flattered by the girl's words. Estelle does not want to be a ghost of the Brienne family, even if she leaves the place. Clement asks, is her name really Estelle? Everything else is irrelevant because she is still a small and fragile child, so she must be protected by her elders. Because Estelle was born into an aristocratic family, she's not suited to work. Estelle said that her parents threw her out, and so Estelle has no money. In addition, Estelle has a hard time because of what happened, and it turns out that the Archduke wants to ask Estelle to live in the Duchy of Valois. Clement holds out his hand to Estelle. The girl was shocked, and the Duke's sons didn't expect such a thing either. Enard was horrified, while Lloyd felt awkward, and Alande was just shocked and didn't know how to respond. Clement says to let Estelle live in Brienne's mansion, and he'll do the girl a favor for free. Clement does this for a reason because he knows that Estelle used her body to ease his son Alande's pain. Estelle was shocked by the Duke's offer and didn't know how to respond. Clement, though, realizes that Estelle is the maid's daughter, but it was a big part of the fact that the girl was able to help Alande, and she will not be useless. Estelle is worried and grateful to the Duke for the offer, but she doesn't know how to agree to such a thing. Clement asks, does he do it out of pity and let Estelle not make him laugh? Clement offers such a favor to Estelle not for free because the girl needs Clement. Estelle did not expect such words. Enard claps his hands and instigates this awkward conversation, telling father that Enard knows he is impulsive, but when they talked about it, Clement said he would side with Enard. Clement looks at Estelle and says it's just a suggestion, and Mistress Estelle should understand that. Clement doesn't press her, so let the guest take her time with her answer. And he apologizes if it burdens the girl. Estelle sighs and agrees with Clement. Still, the Duke wants to welcome his guest to the manor, and he is happy to take care of such a girl. Estelle counts on the Duke's help. After a while, a few days pass. Estelle is being dressed by the maids. It is a pity that the Duke will not be able to join Estelle for dinner. The girl laughed at such words from the maids. She need not worry that he will bring up the subject of guardianship again. Estelle goes down to the hall and realizes that this is not her first time here. But every time she visits, she is delighted, and the Valois mansion is a head above Brienne's. She goes to the dining room, but accidentally steps on the hem of her dress and falls. Estelle feels that her long dress is too long. But the next moment, Estelle is rescued by Lloyd, who's just passing by. He holds the girl so she doesn't fall. Lloyd asks if Estelle is okay. Estelle asks Lloyd if he's okay. She apologizes and thanks Lloyd for catching her. The girl is sorry that the man touched her. At this point, Lloyd was surprised that after touching this girl, he noticed his headache went away. It can't be a coincidence, and Lloyd is more and more surprised by Estelle's ability, but is it possible, or is it just Lloyd's imagination? The Duke walks with Estelle into the dining room and is greeted by a maid at the entrance. Lloyd walks into the hall with Estelle and is greeted by Alande, who is cheerful as always, and Enard frowns that he is not happy to see Estelle. Enard says sadly that he didn't know the guest was coming to dinner and he's not too thrilled to see her. Estelle was worried and didn't know what to say, but the boy warmed up when he saw how worried Estelle was, and asked why Estelle was standing there and to hurry up and sit down at the table because he was hungry. Estelle wondered if Enard was afraid of her presence. Enard sat next to Estelle and says that before her father she was very brave and said what she wanted, but why suddenly Estelle became so modest? And for Enard, it is very interesting. Estelle feels a blow to herself because Enard is trying to bully her. Estelle realizes that she looked directly into the Duke's eyes and could not behave differently. Enard laughs because he has caused the girl embarrassment. Alande tells the girl that she has a parcel and he forgot to tell her earlier. Estelle wonders, and who could have sent her a parcel? Alande thought that it was sent by her father, but they said that the name of the sender is not mentioned. Estelle wonders who the good man is that sent her the package. Estelle sees that it is a wooden chest and she goes to open it. Estelle doesn't think it's from someone in Brienne's family because she wasn't loved there, and it's unlikely that they would send Estelle such things. And Estelle even thinks that Brienne's family thinks that the girl is dead. The next moment, Estelle is interrupted by someone's voice, and he asks for the girl's attention. It turns out to be Lloyd, who has come to see his mistress, and he apologizes for calling her out of the blue. Estelle says it's no big deal and wonders what happened and why Mr. Lloyd came to see her. Estelle turns her attention to the chest she wanted to open. Still, she needs to show her politeness and listen to Lloyd. Lloyd would like to ask if Estelle could open the package first and then talk. Estelle realized her mistake, because Mr. Lloyd noticed her close attention to the parcel, and that's why he was so kind. The girl blushed and apologized because she was also curious about what was in the parcel, and she didn't expect that someone could send her something. Estelle and Lloyd open the parcel to see what is inside. They look in and see that there are 3 items inside. Estelle realizes that it is a strange symbol. The girl opens one of the gifts and sees that it is a gemstone ring. The girl could not believe how such a thing could be here, and why someone unknown sends her such a thing. Audrey comes up and is surprised to see that it is a real diamond. Estelle doesn't know anything about gemstones, so she can't exactly answer that. Audrey just admires the stone. Lloyd wonders who would send a package like this, recognizes this strange crest. Estelle realizes that if it's a letter, it must say who sent the ring. Estelle decides to take a look at the paper that might clear up the confusion. The letter says that it didn't find Estelle and apologizes. The unknown man says that the enclosed items now belong to Estelle. She is her niece who has never seen her face. Audrey notices that Estelle has grown sad since she read the letter. Estelle tries to feel the word niece, and she realizes that maybe this box can tell more about what's going on here. The girl opens it and sees a strange object that glows. Estelle couldn't believe it. In the blink of an eye, a small spark strikes the girl's eye. Estelle instinctively covers her eyes and feels a sudden headache. Audrey walks up to Estelle. That catches the object from falling, and Lloyd also picks Estelle up so the girl doesn't fall. Estelle feels like she's been electrocuted when she opens the box. Lloyd looks at Estelle and says her eyes changed color and turned blue. It's amazing. Lloyd asks for Audrey to get a mirror immediately. The older maid immediately brings a mirror and shows Estelle her reflection. The girl sees that her eyes have become colored, and she cannot understand how this could happen. The Duke explains that it is because of a stone called Dragon's Tear, and Estelle has never heard such a name. Lloyd asks that Estelle dry it carefully. Many years ago, when the earth was destroyed, 4 godlike beings blessed the people. Among them was a family blessed by a phoenix, and it was called the Valois. A family blessed by a griffin in the Archduke of Karlstein. There was a family blessed with the current Imperial dragon. And finally, the unicorn-blessed Mercedes family. This family had the same power as the Imperial family, but was executed for high treason. Overnight, despite its sad fate, the Mercedes family's long-standing popularity was not easily dispelled. Eventually, after the death of the Mad Emperor, the current emperor recognized that the treason verdict was wrong. He apologized and restored a part of the Mercedes family, but there was no longer any Mercedes family left to accept the apology. The holy relic called the Dragon's Tears is a utopia for such creatures. She was the ideal for tamers. In Mercedes' bloodline, someone who can respond to the Dragon's Tears appears from time to time. Enard demands that Lloyd keep it short and wait a while. Does Lloyd mean to say that Estelle, who they thought was the mistress of the Brienne family, was actually the daughter of a maid? But upon closer inspection, it turned out her mother was a descendant of the Mercedes family. Estelle couldn't hide her shock and was even embarrassed. She couldn't believe it. Why the author of this novel had made such a mockery of her character. The assembled company discussed the gift that had been sent to Estelle. Clement says that the letter said that the sender was sending the gift to his niece. So, Leanne Mercedes is still alive. The last descendant of the Mercedes family is Aunt Estelle. Clement realizes that when this gets out, the whole continent will take notice of Estelle. But Clement also realizes that it's not even worth telling people, because sooner or later everyone will find out. Clement is convinced that Estelle has an extraordinary talent. All kinds of cunning gods will stick their heads out in front of Estelle's nose like sheep. And even dragons might be interested in Estelle. Enard says it's not just that, and Estelle knows how badly people overloaded with divine blood suffer, and one touch will make it all clear in a split second. Especially that guy. Clement summarizes that for now, their family's priority will be to protect Estelle. Clement tells Lloyd to find out about the man who delivered the package. Lloyd says he'll do it. The events move to the imperial castle of the empire called Asterio. The first prince of the empire, named Johann, was shocked because he was told that the dragon had gone mad. The servant who brought the news tells him that the chain was almost broken by the fire. The dragon obviously sensed something and tried to escape. Johann realizes that this is unthinkable, and it has been 10 years since the dragon took the pill and fell asleep. 10 years ago, Johann couldn't handle a captured baby dragon, so he decided to put it to sleep with medicine every day. No matter how strong he was, the dragon couldn't just wake up, so there was enough shock to overcome the effects of the medication. And so the only possibility is that the Mercedes family heirloom, the dragon's tear, was opened. Records show that even when the dragon went berserk 100 years ago, there was a person in the Mercedes family who reacted to this gemstone by interacting with the dragon's tear. Even dangerous gods can be dealt with. It was an artifact that made the Mercedes family the most dangerous, and it led to the fact that it had many enemies that all tricks and sneaky ways to kill its descendants. This family was a great threat to the Imperial family, which was the most powerful, and all the enemies of the Mercedes family. The late emperor was afraid and made the worst possible choice. As expected of the family, Mercedes could not be completely exterminated. Liana Mercedes, still alive, and perhaps her blood could be passed on to future heirs. Johann knows a few secrets, but it's an obvious fact. If only Liana had a child, everything would be fine. But unfortunately now Johann knows that even if such a possibility exists, but he is sure that it couldn't have happened without him. After a while, a servant knocks on Johann's door and asks that His Highness receive a guest. Johann asks who it is, and the servant replies that the guest claims to be a member of the Karanka Guild and says that he has information that may be of interest to Johann. The man claims that this information may have something to do with the Mercedes family. Johann realizes that this is an opportunity to find out more about what is going on with his dragon and asks the servant to let the man in. At this time, a letter carrier appeared at the Valois estate from the very center of the empire, saying that the Duchy of Valois must accept the order of His Highness the Crown Prince. Lloyd asks what this order from His Highness is. The letter carrier says that the words of His Highness the First Crown Prince Johann, and as a loyal servant of the empire, the man would like to tell. But then he is interrupted by Lloyd, who was very angry with the man and asks, "Does he really have such a long tongue?" The letter carrier was frightened and trembling with fear. Lloyd demands that the mailman tell the gist. The mailman tells him that His Highness wants the entire Valois family to attend the birthday celebration of the 5th Crown Prince a week later. Lloyd grows angrier and wonders, does the prince summon him personally? But the letter carrier tries to say that's not what this is about because it's an invitation to a party. The letter carrier tells him that all the aristocratic families are invited and that only the Valois family will be left out. Lloyd says that exclusion is when the strong exclude the weak, and he thinks that in this case it should be the other way around. Suddenly, Enard comes up and has been very kind to the guest that is dressed in imperial clothes. He asks, "Is this really the Crown Prince's man?" The letter carrier is glad that at least one of the family members greeted him normally, but that Enard pulls out his dagger and says that then the letter carrier will have to tell what orders the prince gave one by one. Let the man tell without error, for he will die. The letter carrier realizes that there are no normal people in the Valois family, and each of them wants to kill him. He does not understand why fate has turned out this way. Sometime later, in another place, Estelle enters the room because her name was called. It turns out that it was Clement and his eldest son Lloyd, who asks Estelle to come in and says that the Crown Prince seems to have noticed her existence. Estelle wonders and how she could have gotten the Crown Prince's attention. Lloyd says that perhaps the prince will try to get Estelle any way he can and make her his puppet to use the ancient blood of the Mercedes unicorn family. Estelle realizes it's because of her bloodline to the Mercedes family. But why should she obey the prince? Clement says that Estelle is important politically, and it's a much bigger factor than Estelle thinks. If the Imperial family has the support of the Mercedes family, it will increase the dragons a lot. Sander can certainly hide Estelle from the Crown Prince, but the prince is a man as persistent as a snake. He'll try to find Estelle any way he can, and sooner or later it may not turn out well. So why doesn't Estelle come out strong and stop hiding? Clement thinks it might be a better idea not to let anyone touch her. Estelle remembers the times when her parents from Brienne's family bullied her. They asked how long Estelle would embarrass them, and they can't believe that Estelle would think of going out in public like that because it's incredibly embarrassing. For Estelle, hiding was a daily life, and whether she wants to live hidden or show herself, and for Estelle there was no such choice before. But now Clement and Lloyd are bringing that choice to Estelle. Estelle, at least until this moment of opportunity to open up to the world. When the day of the banquet comes, the ladies from all over the empire have been discussing that apparently there are many wonderful people gathering here today, and it is a banquet in honor of the crown prince's birth. One of the women says, "Ma'am, that one of the greatest families will be in attendance today." The butler realizes the last lady has arrived and lets her into the ballroom. His Excellency Duke Clement Valois, along with Lady Estelle Mercedes. They enter the ballroom, and Estelle realizes that it was the right choice, and she decided to show herself to the world. People welcomed Duke Clement Valois. But most of all, people were surprised that Lady Estelle Mercedes was here. Her surname must have been mispronounced, and how could that be? After all, the Mercedes family was completely wiped out. But Estelle was walking as if nothing had happened under the arm of her escort Clement. She felt the eyes of people on her, and realized that this will cause a big furor. Clement sees that Estelle is acting strangely and he thinks she's nervous. But Estelle looks at Clement with a confident look and tries to explain that everything is fine and she will hold on. Clement was glad to hear that and let Estelle act casual because it will give more confidence to the people around her, which will be much better. Estelle accepts Clement's words and knows they are true. If she wasn't ready for something like this, she wouldn't have come to this hall. But what is most surprising in the ballroom was the presence of the family who had earlier kicked Estelle out of their palace in a cold blizzard so that the girl would die there. Brienne's new daughter, whose name was Celia, was just present. The girl looked at Estelle very unpleasantly, and she could not understand. How could this maid's daughter be the daughter of the Grand Duchy of Mercedes? Estelle also noticed Celia, who was standing in the crowd of people. Clement notices that Estelle is behaving in a strange and interesting way. Estelle pays attention to Clement, and then the man asks to dance with him one dance. Estelle smiles and says that it would be an honor for her to dance with such a stately man. Clement sees how happy Estelle is to accept his invitation and turns away from the girl, trying to justify that he would have asked another girl. But everyone's already taken. Estelle laughs at Clement's uncertainty and embarrassment. During the dance, Clement boldly takes Estelle's hands and presses her waist. The girl feels as if it were a dream. After all, she never thought that something like this could happen. Estelle is now at a fancy ball where there are a lot of people. Everyone is chatting happily with each other. And Estelle is one of the guests. She is not looked at as sick, and the girl is taken normally. Brienne's family could never afford to go with Estelle to an event like this. When the dance was over, Estelle moved aside to rest and breathe a little, because as expected, such attention for Estelle is heavy. But then Clement comes to the girl and brings her a drink. Estelle thanks Clement and she tasted a very tasty wine. The man turns to the hall and says that everyone is looking at Estelle very closely, and it seems that many people would like to get acquainted with the representatives of the Mercedes clan that was considered extinct. But Estelle seems that people are more interested in the Duke than in her, and Clement seems to shine and show his saturnal strength and power. The next moment, a servant runs up and says he has an important message for the Lord. Clement carefully drains the man's words, then agrees with him. Clement tells Estelle that he will have to step back a bit, and he asks that Estelle not be afraid and he will not be far away. Estelle agrees and tells Clement not to worry, and nothing bad will happen to her. Estelle tries to reassure herself that she is fine and nothing bad will happen. Estelle is approached by other ladies who see that Clement has left her. They want to meet, and one of them calls herself Elodie Robert. She is happy to meet Estelle. The protagonist welcomes Elodie Robert, and she places a glass of wine on the table. Elodie Robert gets closer to Estelle and says that the girl's hair is very delightful, and it immediately struck Elodie Robert. As soon as Estelle stepped into the hall, the girl felt insecure, for before her hair was always a sign of illness and no one had ever complimented her. Estelle feels insecure and uncomfortable. The next moment, a woman appears that reaches out her hand to Estelle. She asks, "Is she really a descendant of the Mercedes family and Liana's daughter?" Estelle says that Liana was her aunt, not her birth mother. The woman who approached Estelle says that is correct, and it seems the blood genes have been preserved. She cries and wipes away her hills of tears with a handkerchief. The woman forgot to introduce herself, and her name is Maria Stelzian. She was Leon's godmother. Estelle realizes that this woman is much closer to her family than expected. Maria says that on the day it happened, she was communicating with Leon, if only she had noticed in time and hid the child. Estelle realizes that the incident when the Imperial family blamed Mercedes still feels guilty. It becomes very embarrassing. But she thanks Maria and she thanks the woman again. that she still remembers her mom. Estelle says that if her aunt were alive, she would be grateful to Maria for her care and memory. Estelle doesn't even remember what her aunt looked like, but somehow she's sure she would have done the same thing. Maria thanks Estelle for saying such nice words, and she was a kind woman. Maria couldn't protect Aunt Estelle. Maria also wants to say that in the name of Marquis Stelzian, she will protect Estelle. The heroine rejoices and says that Maria's oath is generous to her. Estelle seems to glow like a little sunshine, but she wants to get to know this beautiful woman better. Maria gladly accepts Estelle's hands, and they can have a fun conversation. They will still have the opportunity, and Maria promises it. After Maria leaves, Estelle is approached by more and more people, and by the end, she is tired. The endless chatting with different gentlemen and ladies makes Estelle nervous. Estelle thinks that probably the Duke left not on business but on purpose to make her socialize with these people. Social life is definitely not for Estelle, and she is already tired. Estelle is approached by two young guys, and the girl pays attention to them. The guys introduce themselves as ambassadors of the Archduke of Karlstein, and they accompany Arya Karlstein. Estelle greets these guys. She has heard about the Karlstein family somewhere. The boys apologize, but would like to speak privately with Estelle. The girl was a little surprised at the offer, because she'd never heard anything like that before. Do they really want to take her for a private talk? One of the guys gets worried and tries to convince Estelle that it won't take long and just to have the lady follow them. Estelle felt it wasn't the best idea, but still somehow agreed. When the boys went out on the balcony, where they could talk hidden from other eyes, the guys started to tell Estelle the real reason for their visit. First, one of the guys asks Estelle why her eyes are that color. The guy apologizes for asking so directly, but since Estelle regenerated her eyes, she has a secret, and the Duke wants to meet Estelle. Estelle wonders, does the Duke of Karlstein himself want to talk to her? The messengers say that it is so, and the Duke needs Estelle's help. The girl asks them to take their time, and it can't be solved so quickly. But Estelle realizes that she just remembered that Duke Karlstein was the main character in this world. And he was bound from Mistress Celia. Estelle asks, do the boys really mean Claude Karlstein? His servants confirm that it is true, and they are now talking about Claude. Estelle directly asks why Claude needs her. Karlstein's subordinate says he can't give details, but the conversation is interrupted by Celia, who pulls back the curtains and walks onto the balcony. Celia sees Estelle and they meet eyes. Celia apologizes and wants to talk to Estelle, but I don't think the girl will be here alone. One of the Karlstein ambassadors apologizes to the lady, but they were talking from Miss Mercedes about an important matter. Celia interrupts the words of the guys, and looking at Estelle realizes that she is no longer Estelle Brienne, but Estelle Mercedes. Celia didn't expect to see Estelle at the ball. Celia is getting worried because she hasn't seen Estelle at the mansion. Estelle feels something strange inside her, and it's like Celia knows everything. It's a sly girl trying to deceive with her kindness. One of Duke Karlstein's messengers tells Lady Celia that her words are too harsh. Celia asks the messenger, do they really mean to insult her now? The messenger excuses himself that he didn't mean it. Clement, sensing that something is amiss, enters the balcony and asks where Lady Estelle is, whom he has been looking for so long. Clement tells all three of them that they are taking up too much of his ward's time. The Karlstein servants apologize and turn to Miss Mercedes, saying that they will meet later. But Celia is in no hurry to leave, and Clement asks her directly, does she have something to say? Celia leaves and angrily says to herself that she is a minor character. Estelle hears Celia say these words quietly. Does Celia know that their world is in the novel? Estelle wonders if she is not the only one who knows about the true nature of this world. Clement approaches Estelle and asks why she is standing. Estelle asks the Duke to wait for her. After all, she has important business to attend to. Clement asks Estelle to wait, but the girl is already running away. Estelle is sure that she heard the words about a minor character, and Celia should not know about it. But for some reason, Celia does find out it's an affair. Estelle tries to find Celia. Suddenly, the girl hears a child's voice asking for help. Estelle wonders where it was heard from and realizes that the sound is coming from the forest. Estelle looks out the window at the forest and realizes that the voice must have been heard somewhere there. Estelle walks out to the forest and realizes that somewhere there she must have heard the voice. So she listens. The next moment, Estelle hears a child's voice asking for help. If this continues, he will surely die. Estelle realizes that the child must be in danger and must have been kidnapped. The girl finds nothing better to do, except to go looking for the child herself. She runs towards the voice to find someone who needs help. Estelle finds a dragon sitting on the lap of a strange man. This guy clearly doesn't look okay. The girl looks closely at his face and sees that he is hurt. Turns out it was the dragon crying in a baby voice. Estelle asks, does she really need to call out for someone? But the dragon says you can't call a human and you can't have everything revealed. The dragon clearly looks very pathetic and small. He is worried about the man. Estelle thinks about the dragon's words and what it means to hide the man. In the next moment, the man moved slightly and made a painful sound. Estelle realizes that she needs to help him somehow, and she touches him to hold the man, Estelle. Even through her clothes, she can feel that the man's body is on fire and very similar to Alain's overload symptoms. Estelle remembers that she jumped to hug Alain and it helped save the guy then. If she can use the ability, she will save this man too. Estelle realizes that she doesn't know exactly how her ability affects her. The dragon asks Estelle, will she not be able to save his master as well? The dragon worries that his master will survive. The dragon asks in a childish voice, will he really die because he is very worried about his master? The dragon can't believe he will be alone. Estelle sees the dragon's tears and realizes that she has no choice and must save him. Estelle must somehow use her healing powers. The heroine doesn't know exactly how to do this, but she will have to learn. Estelle recalls a small episode from her life on the estate when the girl came to Alain who was practicing sword fighting. The girl brought him a dry towel and she asked him how to use the sword. Alain asks, is Estelle curious, and he is a little worried that Estelle will be disappointed if she learns the intricacies about sword fighting. Alain tells her that there is no concept of how exactly to use the ball, and it's just instincts. Alain smiles and tries to convince Estelle that these are instincts that are instilled from childhood for the best fighters. Estelle remembers this and realizes she must act on her instincts. The girl must feel something inside herself and do as she sees fit. Estelle thought that the best solution would be to just hug this guy and do the same thing with Alain. This man's body is very hot, as if Estelle is about to be burned, and it would be dangerous if the temperature rises even higher. So Estelle pleads for him to be cured. After a moment, Estelle felt the man try to get up. The dragon was glad that the master was awake. Estelle sees that probably nothing good has happened, and he just as he remained lying there. As expected, one should probably call for Ilya, but then the man's hand grabs Estelle and doesn't let go of the girl. The man stares at Estelle with his yellow eyes and brings the girl closer to him to examine her. The next moment, the man coughs up blood and asks who Estelle is. The girl sees that the guy's mouth is bleeding and she is worried about him. The girl thinks this could end badly, so she asks if he's okay. The man wipes the blood from his face and says he's fine, and especially someone must have helped him. The dragon can't stand his happiness, and he can't contain his emotions, and these master didn't die. And the dragon really thought he would be alone. Those around him sensed the dragon's awkward behavior, and it was very uncomfortable. The situation was urgent, so Estelle helped this guy without hesitation. If he's lying wounded like this in the Imperial palace, it's better. Don't interfere. The man tries to calm his dragon and turns to Estelle. He says she must have been the one who got him out. Estelle realizes that, is it really the man who has black hair and golden eyes? Plus he has a dragon with him all the time. This is the main character in the world of the novel. The dragon confirms the master's words and says it's true that Estelle cured Claude. The man tries to calm his buddy down and says that everything will be all right now. Estelle recognizes Claude Karlstein. It seems to Estelle that for the sake of his status as Grand Duke, he doesn't care about good or bad. So one must be wary of him. Also, Estelle suspects that in the novel this situation should never have happened at all, and she would have survived thanks to the protagonist's buff and all. Estelle gets up from her seat and says that Claude looks better now and she is at peace. The man is still bleeding from his mouth and asks that the girl not to worry, and however, he doesn't understand how Estelle was able to heal him. Estelle realizes that she can't tell Claude that she used Mercedes's powers to heal him. The Karlstein family is a family that has suffered from severe symptoms of overload for generations. Obviously, to Claude, the current Grand Duke of Karlstein Estelle would look like a good first aid kit. since Estelle has the strength of a Mercedes. Perhaps Estelle could be taken advantage of. The girl tries to explain that she has learned to use calming magic. Estelle hopes that he shouldn't notice that it's a lie, and it seems to work. But Estelle didn't notice how she blushed all over herself trying to deceive him. The dragon tells Claude that if this magic really worked on him, then isn't the benefactor the legendary tamer from the magic school? Claude seriously asks the mistress, "Isn't she from the School of Magic?" Estelle realizes that she is far gone in her deception and tries to say that she is not, and she is not that excellent, and wizarding is just a hobby of hers, and she is learning this magic as a peaceful occupation. Claude clearly realizes that the mistress is lying and doesn't believe her words. Claude wants to reward Estelle, but she stops the man and explains that it's all right and good deeds are not paid for. Claude is surprised because Estelle steadfastly refuses his help. But then Claude takes a closer look at the heroine and is amazed. Claude stands up sharply, angry and surprised. Does the mistress know who he is? Estelle asks what he is talking about. The girl realizes that the situation is not on her side.